again. What I'm going to present to you are some concepts that you're going to need to understand. The basic program that I've developed is 2 phases for the behavior management part. And again, it's based on what we know works from the research that we've done all these years. Phase 1 is going to deal with how to train you to be a more positive parent, a more positive reinforcer. Phase 2 will be focused more on timeout and discipline. But I want to give you some concepts or ideas so that you can understand what we're going to talk about. And if you have paper and you can take notes, that would be important, because we're going to go a little bit fast and you can refer back to it. I first start off by what I describe as the ABCs of behavior change. Okay? And the A stands for the antecedents. The antecedents are just a big word that says what comes right before the behavior. That's all of the things I just mentioned. Your background, the stress in the family, your childhood's temperament, your temperament. What we're going to look at is the type of command that you give your child and how that literally determines whether or not your child is going to behave or obey you. And we'll get into that. In terms of the antecedent, we're always going to want to be aware of it because it's going to have some influence on the behavior. The behavior itself, I want you to be specific about what you're talking about. We have a tendency as humans to generalize, and everything I'm telling you, you can apply to your marriages and your other relationships. We have a tendency to think, our kids are slobs and lazy and mean and inconsiderate, and we can apply that to our partners as well. When you use terms like that, it is labeling the person, and it's very general. And when you're stuck with a label, it's very difficult to change it. And I was the middle of 6 and the most difficult child, so it's probably obviously why you get into psychology and become an expert in how to discipline children. But I know what it felt like to have that label and how difficult it is to shake it off. So what I really try and get you to do as parents is to be specific about the behavior and to label the behavior and not the child, okay? So we'll get back to that. I had asked you to write down some of the problems that you're having with your kids. We usually have specific things like wets the bed, hits brothers and sisters, talks back, that kind of list of behaviors, so that, again, we can change individual behaviors. It's very difficult to change an entire concept like lazy or mean or something like that. Okay, C is the consequence, and that's obviously the biggest part of what's going to influence your child. And we're going to talk about 2 main consequences. 1, positive praise and attention. Okay, and the other major category are punishers. P-U-N-I-S-H-E-R-S. Okay, so we're going to look at reinforcers and punishers. And that's real simple. It sounds simple, but it's very difficult to implement, or we all wouldn't be here. By definition, if you follow a behavior by positive praise or attention, that behavior is going to go up over time. If, on the other hand, you're punishing it or ignoring it, it's going to go down over time. Okay, those are just 2 standard behavioral rules. Well, what happens is, our biggest mistake, I think, as parents, is we inadvertently provide what we call negative attention. Okay. Following a behavior that you don't want. And I'll give you an example. When you have, you've told your kids to come in and clean up your toys, and they, you go back and you're starting to cook dinner, and you look over and they haven't moved. Okay, so we'll talk about how that works anger-wise. But when you come to them and you start saying, how many times do I have to tell you to... I work hard all day, you never listen to me, I can't take this anymore. You think that you're lecturing them and maybe motivating them, but what you're actually doing is increasing the negative behavior of not listening. The reason for that is you're following it with a lot of negative attention. Any kind of attention following a behavior is going to increase that behavior. Okay? So if they're playing Legos and they should be getting their shoes on, and you come and you say, "What are you doing? How many, we're going to be late. Now look what you've done." And you're, ranting and raving. All of your exasperating, lecturing, ranting and raving is actually causing the behavior that you don't want to go up. And you need to memorize that, because that's one of the biggest mistakes that we make. If you are adequately punishing the behavior, and I'll use whining as an example, you ask your child to come in, and they start to whine, and you immediately put them in timeout without making a fuss at all. Just, okay, that's whining, you're in timeout. over time, with everything else being equal, which we'll talk about, that behavior will go down if you punished it accurately. Okay? So those are just two main concepts I want you to keep in mind. We're going to go back to them and trying to understand why your kids aren't behaving the way that you want them to. So reinforcers, we're going to talk about positive praise and intention, and also how you inadvertently use negative attention to increase the very behavior you do not want. Teachers will look at timeout, a little bit about ignoring, and the key to